So if you're not sick of me yet, we'll do something called Ask Anything, where we answer questions that you all have submitted. And I think we have 3 questions that we are answering today. We have kind of a backlog that we're working our way through. This is a great question. What is your favorite part about being a pastor? I have several answers, but my first one is all of you guys, the people. It looks a little different than it did pre-Wesley and pre-COVID, right? But I love being with you and being a part of this church family and hanging out together. I also love that every day is different. You know, some days I think I know exactly how it's going to go, and that usually is not how it goes. And I think that's the case for most of us, but it seems like it is especially the case in this job that, you know, I think I'm going to have a quiet day at the church office, and then there's a phone call. And it's different now with COVID restrictions and things, but it used to be that there were a lot of days I would end up at the hospital, right? And there were a lot of days that I would end up with people in the midst of a crisis. And those are hard moments, but those are important moments. They are moments that matter. And you get to be there as a pastor in the midst of things like premarital counseling and weddings and baby dedications and exciting, wonderful, happy moments. And you also get to be there in moments in the hospital and at a graveyard. And those are moments that matter. And those are moments where it doesn't matter how much training you have, how many years of school you've gone to. All you can do is be present and hope that the Holy Spirit will be present too. And pray and be with people. And those are moments that matter. There's a lot of stuff I do on a weekly basis that needs to be done. You know, we got to keep the church running. We got to print a bulletin. We got to write a sermon. But those things are good and they're fine. But it's the other moments, the unexpected things that come crashing into your day that are really the moments that matter. I personally love the studying and the preaching and the questions that come with being a pastor. I love the fact that part of my job is to study the Bible and to think about things and try and have something that might be worth hearing every Sabbath. And then I love questions. I love things like Ask Anything. That's why we do this, because part of that is just journeying through life together, right? Being a church family and saying, hey, I don't have an answer. Let's go find an answer together, right? Let's look at the Bible. What do you think it says? How do you read that? Let's have a conversation. And that is probably my favorite part. If I had to narrow it down to one thing, my favorite part of being a pastor is probably just journeying with my church family and having the privilege to do that. How many kids do you want to have is our next question. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I sometimes will bounce my answers off of my dear husband when I answer them and make sure, you know, because sometimes I'm like, I have this whole answer, but I don't feel like it's necessary. How much of this should I say? And he'll be like, none of it. You should answer this way or whatever. He's very helpful in me thinking through Ask Anything questions, usually. He wanted to have a bow and a quiver full of arrows and quote Psalms to you that children in your youth are like arrows in a quiver. The more God blesses you with, the better. And I said, that sounds like it could be a lot of kids. I'm tired. So my answer is at least 2. Because there's one running around thinking that he owns the place because he spends too much time at the church. And there's one who's coming out in a few months, so at least 2. That's my answer. In all seriousness, God has blessed us with kiddos, and we happen to like them. And I think we'll come to a point where I'll say, I'm too tired, no more. Also, they're expensive. But we don't have a grand plan currently. So at least 2, maybe more. We'll see how life and the good Lord blesses us or tests us in the future. Our last question today is a very long one, but it's a great question. So this is what the question says. When an evangelist is invited to come and speak, I'm wondering why most of the time they do revelation. They talk about scary stuff, and many preachers, many speakers, leave the real message of revelation out. Well, we know that revelation is the revelation of Jesus Christ, right? That's the full title. So I think what they're saying is they leave out Jesus and they just talk about the scary stuff. What happened with old-time religion, the gospel, Christ our righteousness, and tools of how to connect with God, etc.? There's a lot in this question, right? So let me try and answer it and be brief. That's always the challenge, isn't it? Here's my opinion, okay? This isn't really a question that I can answer straight from the Bible, is it? Because it's about how we do things now in our church. So this is my opinion. My opinion is that Adventists, the place that we are the most different from other Christians, is usually in our view of prophecy, of Revelation and Daniel. So I think that the way we do evangelism is a holdover from a different time. A time in our country's past where we expected that everyone had a Christian worldview, and that everyone had a certain level of biblical knowledge, that they were familiar with the broad strokes of the biblical story, and that most of them were probably Protestant. And so the strategy was not to say, let's lead you to Jesus. The strategy as an evangelist was to say, you already know Jesus. Here's why you should be an Adventist. Here's how we're different. We have the truth. We understand prophecy better than whatever church you happen to be going to. Now, whether or not that was the right attitude, even at the time, is a whole nother discussion, right? But I think that the way we do evangelism, the reason we talk about the scary beasts and all of that, is because it's what is most unique to us. I think that we need to do things differently because we are living in a different time. Ellen White writes this in Ministry of Healing. She says, Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed his sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. Then he bade them, follow me. It seems to me that if we hung out with people and we really wanted the best for them, and we met their needs, and we really truly were their friends, and were in their confidences, and then we said, have you met my friend Jesus? That would be a better way than saying, look at the scary things in Revelation. We live in a time and a place where we can't expect that people know their Bibles. We can't expect that people already have a relationship with Jesus and are already going to a church on a given weekend, right? So I think that in that we can't assume that people have this knowledge, that they have this worldview, and we have to start from a different place than we have in the past. And so what does that look like? I don't know. I just know we need to do better. And we're going to talk about this a little bit because remember, we took a survey a while ago. And we're going to go over those results here soon. But part of that survey said that the thing we as a church, as this local congregation, need to do better at, our lowest score, was in needs-based evangelism. So if we're going to do what that says, Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching people. Well, needs-based evangelism, meeting people's needs. He ministered to their needs. He showed sympathy for people. He won their confidence. And only then, after all of that, did he say, "Come follow me." So if we are going to start, I think we need to start where Jesus started. And I think that is with relationships and with meeting people's needs. And I don't know what that looks like, and it's not up to me. Isn't that great? It's up to us as a church family. So you might remember that a few months ago we had some clipboards and we did some kind of groups where we got into groups and talked and worked on things. Guess what? It's not over. It's coming back in the new year, so be ready for that. We're going to put you to work because it is up to us as a church family to say, how do we want to do this thing? And it's my opinion that we got to start with meeting people's needs and with building relationships. Because if we start with, here are the scary things in Revelation, we're going to fall into the same traps, and we're not going to meet people where they are today. So, we need to do that, and we need to live like Jesus lived in loving people. Here are some great resources. I always like to say when we answer these questions, this is the 5 to hopefully less than 10-minute version. And there's a lot more that could be said in answer to any of these questions. I am not the beginning and the end, the authority on anything. So take a picture of this, or you can text me or email me. I will email it to you. 28 Fundamental Beliefs, there are 2 numbers I've included. There's the link. The book of Acts in the Bible is a great place to start, right? Because that's how the early church did evangelism. They didn't even have the book of Revelation yet. It hadn't been written. But they loved people, and they met people's needs. And they told them about Jesus and said, "Come meet my friend Jesus." A couple of books by Ellen White. There's a book by John Eldredge. It's a very small book called Epic, which talks about the story of Jesus and incorporating that into our lives. And then I'm a big fan of John Stott. Why I Am a Christian and The Cross of Christ are both very good books, which I would recommend for a lot of things, including a starting place for this. And then there's a great podcast that I like a lot. It's non-denominational Christian, and it's called the Disciple Makers Podcast. So those are some places I would start. As always, I want to thank you for trusting me with your questions, hard and harder. And we will continue to answer those. We're getting to the really hard ones, guys, that I've been putting off. So you have that to look forward to, and so do I. Thank you so much for trusting me with your questions. Happy Sabbath.